I don't know how I missed this article, but whatever happened to people just quitting their jobs instead of running to news outlets and video game journalists to complain about glass ceiling instead of just going out and getting another job? Well, apparently the LA Times published an article earlier this week that I entirely missed about Riot Games, and it would appear that they're in big trouble again. They just aren't doing enough. This article, written by Sam Dean, says that Riot Games casts itself as a kind of place where gamers dream to work. Its tricked-out Los Angeles campus features a pirate-themed coffee bar, gourmet cafeteria, spare workstations where employees can fire up League of Legends, and the company's sole title. In what the company calls its manifesto, Riot says it knows that talented rioters are the key to everything we do. The right thing often means upending the status quo. But allegations from current and former employees detailing a workplace soaked with sexism and harassment, and they describe the company's largely cosmetic response, have thrown those values into questions and Riot Games into crisis mode. In an interview with The Times, 10 current and former employees said that they had experienced double standards, glass ceilings, or harassment at a company where 21 out of 23 senior executives are men, and 80% of the total workforce is male. This is, of course, to imply that there is some correct distribution of gender at a company that everyone is to thrive for, that even if the employee is less qualified, if they have a particular set of genitalia, you should be hiring them as to get your numbers closer away from Bush League level. 4 female employees said they found their careers stymied and ideas dismissed. Staffers have leaked internal communications to online forums known for targeting and harassing outspoken women in gaming. Uh-oh, I've received some leaks. 2 employees who publicly defended diversity initiatives found themselves targeted by online mobs and out of jobs soon after. Maybe that's what happens when all you do is hire male feminist allies. Most spoke under conditions of anonymity, citing non-disparagement agreements they had signed upon leaving the company and fear of professional retaliation or online harassment. Let me be clear. Generally, when you sign a non-disparagement agreement, or you sign some level of paperwork when you've been terminated or choose to leave a company, it's in exchange for some severance or cash amount. So what you're saying, LA Times, is these totally trustworthy and ethical people signed an agreement to not disparage the company and then went out and did it anyway. So let's hear what they have to say. In a response, a company co-founder has choked back tears in a company-wide apology, and Riot's board has brought in Francis Frey, the consultant from whom Uber hired to reform its culture and reputation in the wake of its own scandal. The organization today is craving accountability, Frey said in an interview with The Times. Right, you hire these people that come in and enforce rules that aren't needed, and they become their own. They hold companies hostage. Then they bring in a bunch of people that think just like them, and what you end up with is Ubisoft. Bay Area tech companies have been rocked by workplace sexism controversies in recent years, but Riot is the first LA tech company to reckon with a scandal of this scale. With 2,500 employees and $2.1 billion in revenues in 2017, Riot is one of the largest video game companies in the world. So we're talking about a company with 2,500 employees, and you're basing this hit piece in LA Times on the word of 4 anonymous current or former employees who also took the time to go back on their non-disparagement clauses they signed in likelihood in exchange for cash. Riot spokesperson Joe Hickson said that the allegations from employees have highlighted the need for an overhaul of Riot's culture, systems, and processes, but could not comment on any specific claims. Jesse Perlo, who worked until 2016, for Riot's brand and communication team said that women were constantly undermined in the workplace and little changed when they spoke up internally. We would share our experiences over and over again. I don't know if it was because we were a minority in the company, but nothing meaningful was done about it. Again, this is what happens when you have a culture of male feminist allies and you have these basically hostage takers in these social justice positions that you hire. You create an excuse for bad ideas. Now, we don't know if their ideas were the best ideas. We don't know what their ideas were. If you've ever worked in an office, in a business type environment, okay? When you've sat around that table, many ideas get thrown around and almost none of them actually happen. And none of it has anything to do with anybody's genitalia set. I worked in the business world for about 15 years until going out on my own. And it was very common for many ideas to be shared in our corporate Monday executive level meetings, and almost none of them were taken. That's just how things go. But you didn't see any of us, which there was a mix of women and men in that group, blaming it on our gender. That seems to be an exclusively West Coast and or video games industry thing. 2 women out of 2,500 said they experienced professional retaliation for asking pointed questions in Q&A sessions with senior managers. If anybody felt that way or experienced that, then this kind of thing we are looking to eliminate across the organization, Hickson said in response. We really are trying to put stake in the ground and say we as industries can be much better at these issues, not to excuse the fact that they ever took place at Riot, but to say that we can be leaders in this space. So does that mean you want to be leaders at taking bad ideas just because they are from the mouths of women or POCs? Don't they know that this is constantly a moving target? First, it starts with not enough women. Then it's not enough POCs. Then it's not enough transgender people. Then it's not enough immigrants. Then it's not enough. I mean, why even open the door? Once you open the door a crack to these crazy people who unfortunately got useless degrees in gender studies, who grew up, in my opinion, in households that probably didn't teach their kids any accountability, it never ends. You will never do enough. We talk about this is the LA Times running this hit piece. 2 out of 2,500 employees. And you run this piece and you paint the entire company. You would never expect that kind of homegrown small company mindset of nepotism to be able to persist at a company of thousands, one employee said. But it does. Okay, I'm assuming whoever said this is probably 20 years old and never worked in a corporation or a big company. Nepotism happens every company, everywhere, all the time. Doesn't matter how big or small it is. That's how you get ahead in this world. That's the reality. You have to be the best, but then you also have to be some of the most well-liked. That's how business works. Sorry, not sorry. Grow up, and when your balls finally drop, maybe you might be able to get ahead in this world. You figure out how business works. Or maybe you should go back and be a barista. Maybe that's a better fit for you. And now after the latest hit piece, Riot has shaken things up and the power of balance in the board for the first time in 7 years, but an incident just days after the company published its pledge to reform. So they didn't rehaul an entire company of 2,500 people in 2 days. That's a problem. It's a pledge to reform through a commitment into questions for some employees. Riot hosted an international event at Seattle Gaming Conference exclusively for women and gender non-binary people. Such networking sessions are a common tool for companies looking to diversify, simply in fields such as engineering and game development, which skew heavily male and white compared with the population at large. So you want every corporation to look exactly like the United States in terms of the color of everybody's skin. You don't want companies to have the best employees. It sounds like you want socialism. Riot hosted an event. The reaction was swift on websites and forums dedicated to decrying social justice and battling the push for more minority representation in video games. Again, this is a common misconception. I don't have a problem with more minority representation in video games. I have a problem with worrying about representation in video games. Just make good games. The section of popular online forum Reddit dedicated to League of Legends was flooded with comments accusing the company of sexism against men and what they described as far-left policies. I would agree. A Riot developer named Daniel Klein took to his personal Twitter account to defend the conference session. After arguing that sexism and underrepresentation in the industry made such events necessary, he said, "I sincerely hope these man babies crying in that thread will grow up someday." Yeah, I see you forgot a lot of the other more heinous things he said, but interesting. Angry responses continued to roll in from the public, but retaliation came from a faction of inside Riot too. A Riot employee leaked screenshots of an internal chat room where employees discussed diversity issues in to a section of Reddit created by supporters of Gamergate, a movement known for, here we go, harassing advocates for diversity in games and game companies. In an all-company email, Riot head of information security Christopher Hims wrote that the leak was a massive violation of trust and it fundamentally breaks our ability to communicate openly and honestly with each other, adding that it also puts the writer whose messages were leaked in risk in real life. Within days, both Lehman and Klein were both out of jobs. Good. Riot management later announced that employees that took the screenshot leaker was identified and also fired. Interesting. "I feel a lot of people are silently giving up," one current employee said. "There are a lot of sadness and resignation to the fact that nothing permanent or meaningful is going to happen. That's because it doesn't have to happen." And the article finishes with, "The games industry as a whole is behind the tech industry by 15 years or so. And El Sabawi, who was hired in Riot in 2015, and tech industry is probably behind the corporate industry by 20 years or so. They have a lot of catching up to do." By the way, this is coming from a state, California, that has now made it illegal to not have women on your board of directors, regardless of whether or not they are qualified for the job. And to be clear, by the way, if you're enjoying this video, please remember to click the thumbs up button. It really, really helps the channel. I don't know what the heck's going on with notifications this week, but they are not working. The reality is, and will continue to be, yes, there are probably some people against ever working with women. Some 0.0000001% of people. And I bet you more of them are women than men. Just saying. But no matter how many times we say it, it will never be reported honestly by the companies like LA Times. We are against forced diversity. We are against forced quotas of skin color and genitalia, because this is not good for the customer, this is not good for the company, and this is not good for the individual getting something they hadn't earned and they're unqualified for, because they will fail at this job. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.